Sparky Coach Lounge Room episode 3, 2 of them featuring the Ford dog.
Fordy.
Ford Lord.
Ford Lord.
Whoa, that's pretty strong.
That's what they were saying.
Just give yourself a shout out. So you're new age and you run Spark Your Interests podcast, which I love. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Do you love it?
I love doing it. Yeah, it's fun. I love doing I love podcasting and getting new people to come on, and we're sort of going into different ventures now. I've done I've got about 5 in the bank, and I'm like kind of burning out, so I've got to like stop a bit and have a bit of a break. Because I've taken it in a little bit in a different direction. We're getting some new guests on that have like I guess brands, companies, and things like that, like within the industry, which has been super fun to switch up. So some exciting things coming out soon with that side of things. But
who's been your favorite pod to date? The one you just enjoyed?
I actually love more the one I did last night with Naturally Cooked, 2 lads, Naturally Cooked Sunscreen, 2 like young dudes from up the coast. They just started a sunscreen brand. They're 25 years old. It's stocked in all CNWs across Australia. Just 2 young lads having a go, heaps of fun. And we actually filmed like some skits. Like I just had some ideas and I'm like, come down, I'm going to go CNW, we're going to film like a heap of skits. I've got my camera and I've just got these fucking wild ideas. You might not be into it. Let's just film it. I'll show you them after. This might come out before all the videos. So we did that for like a couple of hours filming, taking the absolute piss, which created a real good relationship. Then the chat we had was just so genuine and really good. And like their story of like what they're doing, they're giving back. I love being able to talk to people that are actually like doing something for the industry, but they're doing something for like people's health in general. Like they give 10% of their proceeds go to TX. We also just did a podcast with Trademark. Same thing, like they started TX, so pushing in that mental health realm and talking about that sort of stuff. But then these guys are trying to get funding to set up to do free skin checks for tradies on site. So they're going to drive around in a van and do free skin care checks. And some of the facts they're spitting out are just like crazy. And I'm so bad at sunscreen, like I don't wear it. So like it fully pulled my head in, and I'm hoping like the conversation I put out there is going to help some people. So interesting. That was one of my favorite ones because I feel like it pulled my head in as well. So I like doing that.
Yeah, that's
completely
cool.
Different.
And then you didn't say me, favorite one of the No, I mean you got to think about when you're on site. I mean, I grew up surfing and bodyboarding. You know, sunscreen was a secondary thought a lot of the times. And then when he's on site, but you know, you don't think about that's one thing, sport activity in the sun, but when you're on the deck work in sun, or you're working on a roof in the sun all day.
Some of the facts are spitting like men are like 50% more likely to get it than women.
Yeah.
And then the amount of men that make up the trade industry is like 80-something% or something. I don't quote on these facts because it's completely wrong, but high. So then like the actual stats of people that get melanomas is like so much higher in the trade industry. And like the whole thing with sunscreen is like people put it on and feel shit and stuff. So they've created a sunscreen that like sits on like a moisturizer. So it's really comfortable to wear. And just like all the ways they're forecasted, like these guys are not tradies at all. So talking to them was so funny because like they've never been in that realm.
They're not from the trade
So,
world.
Like, they just like full gun ho. Like we just don't even know what we're doing. We just went to the 5 biggest builders in Australia and are getting them to like put our sunscreen on sites and stuff. And like they're stocked in like CNW and stuff. They're trying to do like they're running a campaign to try and get stocked in a BCF at the moment and doing all these videos for it. So like I feel like talking to them, they're 2 guys are going to blow up, I reckon. So watch this space, I reckon.
That's cool.
They've got it like set, I think. Yeah.
And how does someone support like Spark Your Interests more? Is it what just shout it out? Do you want to like on Spotify?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever pushed that whole like and subscribe thing, but if that helps boost it up, why not? Give it a go. But yeah, I think just sharing it out. Like I think the thing I like is like what we're doing is so different. Like, and I love that we can collaborate on stuff, and it's not like a competition between podcasts. We're talking about different things. You know, like you guys you're trying to help people grow a business. We are trying to, I guess, raise like the industry standard by bringing light to things that people aren't aware of, like, and we can completely mash them in, which I think is good. I don't think you have to you can listen to both. Put it that way. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
That's why we're here, to build the industry. Amazing. And Cam, introduce yourself. I mean, you know, need no introduction, but
Just self-proclaimed Cam the man. If this is the Ford Lord, I'm going to go Cam the man. Nah, yeah, just here to learn and share some knowledge as well. Which I'm probably really big on that. I think sort of touching on there what Fordy was talking about. I guess like what motivates me a lot to like do the pod, but also sort of work with Crowe to sort of like get our ideas together is the knowledge side of things. I always felt it's a really weird industry, particularly electrical. I feel like we're very protective as Sparkies. It's like, I'm not going to tell you that. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you just tell us how to do that? Like, I'm not trying to cut your grass or anything. I'm literally in another state sort of thing. Like, I'm not going to impact you, let alone the next suburb. So I just like to share experiences and share knowledge because I feel like knowledge is one of the most powerful tools in the world. Because if you don't know something, you don't know it. But if you can get that and don't have to make the same mistake that someone else has made, I feel like that's a success in the scheme of things.
Yeah, I remember going, because we're probably all a similar age. How old are you again, 40?
32.
Yeah, similar. I'm 40. Very similar. yeah, same. We're the same.
Sorry,
but I remember like growing up and it was how much is due price for a data point, and it was, the trip time in your mind on that conversation, it was like, bang, I'm shutting down. I'm not continuing on with this conversation. So, and that was just like then that was a harder time to gather information because the internet wasn't so incredibly
The Nokia mobile for 3310 was how you text everyone after you played Snake at Smoko.
Snake was my Smoko. And then my old Did you ever play Snake or not?
I had an iPhone in school.
That was
Really?
Yeah,
Okay,
how much
yeah.
younger I am than you.
I got a mobile at 16 and just to play Snake 1, basically.
Oh,
so it was
I reckon it was-
yeah,
I would have been a bit younger.
Well, yeah,
so that makes sense.
That's right. But yeah, smartphones came out in like 2010. I remember the iPod Touch, which was like built like a phone. It was around like that 2010 because I remember I went backpacking through Europe in 2010 and a few people had it. And it was like, that's so cool. Like, because you could just hook up to the internet, like on a Wi-Fi and message people through Messenger and all that sort of stuff. Funny story though. And then I remember I met this fella from Sydney. Him and his girlfriend had one, or he had one, and he's like walking through the streets of Paris actually, late one evening, and he's using the maps to find where it is, and then he got held up and had to hand over his. He'd been in Europe for like all of like a week, and technically they know he had no technology. Which is really funny though. I did my whole European adventure backpacking with no mobile phone. I just handed it back to my old company because I had a company phone, and then just never bought one. And it's honestly the best thing ever.
What is another chat would be so interesting to talk about is like, and as an apprentice in the van, were you driving around with the Malways to try and like find where to go?
Oh, like, Turn to page 332, G12, what the hell?
I feel like some of the tradies I worked with still ran that, but I obviously still had, like you had phones, so maps and phone, or like what's sat nav?
The Garmin,
But then it'd be like one of the couple of old guys like, grab the nose. I'm like, I fucking can't read. I'll get sued if I can see.
Yeah.
And like, you'd been like, take that. Basically, kids these days that take that for granted. Like, get the fucking big fat book out.
Yeah.
And
get the Gregory's
going, and then flip 20 pages to get back to that page. Like, man, how did you price for that back in?
That was the best was when you would get it and it'd just be like the main road and just like an empty field. And then when you turn up there, you'd be like, oh, this is a brand new estate. And there's like 25 streets. You're like, well, I'm just going to have to wing this. I'm going to see the whole estate today.
The Gregory Street direction. So good. But talking today, we're going to go through a few topics. I want to go through credit cards and I guess the importance of them in business and also the dangers of them in business. Going to go through finding work, what it looks like at the start, what it looks like in the middle, what it looks like at the end. And what other topics do we have? Is that kind of it?
I
guess see where the land
see where we land. Yeah,
cool. So credit cards,
free money.
Yeah,
to a point. Yeah, free money.
So this has got brought up from you're in some kind of alumni chat.
Secrets. Sparky Illuminati that no one knows about. We'll have to bleep this out. I just was talking to someone and they brought it up about that they had to maneuver some money around and do some crazy shit to like sort of last, I don't know, to get themselves back on their feet. And I said, well, why don't you just use a credit card? Do you have a credit card? And they're like, nah. I was like, well, do you have a credit card? I'm like, no, I got an overdraft, Amex, and a facility credit card. Like, and I run all three, like, to the ground if you have to. Like, not just for like, obviously there's like cash flow, but then there's like points as well, which is like a whole nother thing, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But I was pretty blown away to hear that someone was running a business without it. And I put it out to a few other people, and a couple of people were like, no, I never even thought about it. But then a couple of other guys like, yeah, I put every single thing on. Like, you're probably going to as well, like why the benefits are with wholesalers and all those things and giving you extra time. But that's why I thought it would be a good chat, because I don't know how many people listening to this go, well, credit card, like that's a great idea. I've never even thought about it. Or they've got like a stigma around it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a huge stigma. I think for me, I remember I was using a personal credit card, and then a few of my friends started to get an Amex, and we were moving about 50 grand a month with a wholesaler at that point. So on top of the other things you can put on your card, like rego, insurances, just like stuff, right? And then I remember I was like, oh, maybe I have a meeting with Amex. I had an Amex Platinum card. And the guy was like, is how much do you spend? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, oh, yeah, you're missing out on about 3 to 4 family business trips to Europe a year in points.
Crazy.
And I was like, are you serious? For paying for the same thing I'm already paying for? So that was eye-opening to me. I think that Amex Platinum is like $1,800, $2,000. And, but like if you're spending between 50 and 70 grand, you're probably getting 10 to 12 grand back a year on that ish, somewhere around that kind of thing. And also, I remember getting the Amex, and one of the big things with Amex is the wholesaler is going, the wholesaler's going to charge you a percentage, 2.5%. I think it might have dropped a little bit from then.
It's about 1 point. It depends on what you can negotiate. Yeah, but
it's going to go up.
Oh yeah, but I remember speaking to the wholesaler and being like, can you absorb this? I need you to absorb this. And when he's spending 50 to 70 grand a month somewhere, well, what's he going to say? Like, and not saying like I hand him over a barrel or like, but
you are going to take it.
Yeah, but you're working together. I'm sure he maneuvered, some other prices up.
PowerPoint. Oh, yeah, Kipsel just had a price rise, by the way.
Yeah.
5%.
Classic PowerPoint's now $21. Yeah. What the hell? So the wholesale was able to absorb that. But the whole thing with the credit card, if you look at it holistically, is you're kind of using the wholesaler as a credit card already, whether you know it or not. You're buying materials on January 2, they get charged on February 1, and then you probably pay that in March 1. So the wholesaler, that's probably why you sign a credit application form, because you are using them as credit. So you're essentially already doing this. The benefit of a credit card is you can come in, so you buy the materials on Jan 5, get the invoice on Feb 1, it's due on March 1. Now you pay on the credit card March 1. Now the credit card statement comes in March 15. Mm-hmm. Now you can pay that April 15. So what you're doing with a credit card sense is you're sort of like delaying, you're using someone else's cash to sort of as an overdraft to float you, right? And you're gathering points at the same time. The thing that I would say is you must pay back on time. It's like the 20%.
It's in the teens, somewhere in the high teens
is too high. So use it, and my disclaimer to using it is it has to be paid off when you say it's going to be paid off. Otherwise, you are looking pretty average. But on that too, I want to backtrack to relationships with the wholesalers, and it took me a while to get to this point. But when the invoice, traditionally the wholesaler gets charged, at the end of month, and you pay end of that month. I just made a sort of rule working with the wholesalers. I was like, as soon as that bill comes in, I'm going to pay it. Yeah. So it comes in Feb 1, I would pay Feb 1 or 2. And they were like, you don't have to pay it at this point. But I always that's how I liked people to do business with me. I send the invoice, they pay. It feels amazing, right? Think about when you send an invoice for whatever amount and someone pays that night. Like, you tell your friends about that stuff. Yeah. That's relationship building. I want to go back to work for that client. And I remember doing that for the wholesaler, and they were frothing. And then that relationship was enabling us to call them on Sunday, which could probably only happen like a handful of times, But Saturday night, Sunday, Monday morning, they would drop everything and do stuff for us. PG related stuff, nothing X-rated at this point to my knowledge. Stuff still coming out, of course. But interesting. Anyway, credit cards. Well,
Yeah, so I mean, I think they're simplistically a really easy way to extend your line of credit as such and float your business. And a friend of mine, or family friend of ours who was in the hairdressing game. So he would buy stock on at the beginning of the month, so put in like so in his salons and things like that, and then it would be turned over within a month. So by the time he's paid his supplier, which was, I think he had 60-day terms with the supplier, plus then it ends up being, I think, about 15 days after that for your credit card. Credit cards are roughly due around that sort of 15th, 18th of the month. I can't quite remember, somewhere around there. So he's now sort of sitting at around sort of 75 days after he purchased it, but it's also about 45 days since he's moved it all on.
Yeah.
Already. So does that, I know that it's like some of us might need to get a whiteboard out for that, but so basically, so
Matt Damon, Goodwill Hunting, like, wait a minute.
And so when he sort of was telling me that, this is a number of years ago. So he was using the credit card facility's money to run his whole business, so he didn't have to sink in his own cash as such. So I think that's a pretty easy analogy to get your sort of head around. And that's the way I've always looked at it simplistically. Now, obviously, there is a danger around when you like can't pay it off because you are paying a high interest rate. But I also sit there and I guess go back to what Fordy was touching on before, and you'll probably elaborate a bit more on it too, that it can buy you just a little bit of time if you do get into trouble. Yes, there's interest in it. Involved in it, and it's not a beautiful interest rate, but it might just tie you over for a week or 2 weeks until that payment comes in. And I think you need to use that as a learning curve though, of like, so if you do hit that scenario, why has it happened, what's happened, use a learning tool, but it's also does provide you a little bit of I guess I don't like to use it as a safety net, but it provides headspace, I think. And headspace to me in business is probably one of the most important things.
Yeah, I think like you don't like, and you got to look, if you pay on time within the time frame, you don't pay any interest. You just pay a credit card holding fee. So like, that might be like $500 a year with NAB, something like that. Like it's not much at all. There's a monthly fee. But if you're paying it within the month, you don't actually pay interest. So it is technically free money because you're just using it, and then you might be waiting for money to come in, and it's not actually costing you anything. But what I think is a good point to get across to people is you also have to build it up. Like you can't just go and get $100,000 credit card. Like you have to like prove that you can pay it back. So you might have to start off with getting a $10,000 allowance on that. So the thing to do is, before you're in the shit and you need $50,000 and you go, I'll just go get a credit card because you're probably not going to get $50,000 straight up if you haven't had a line of credit before. Just get one now, and it might be $10,000 opening, and then just start using it for stuff. And even if you go, I've got to go and pay a $10,000 bill, pay it on your credit card, and then just pay it off, then you get the points. So it's just you're cycling the money through. Even if you pay it off the same day, you've still gone through the credit card and you get the points for it. So as the plus side of that. That shows that you're paying the credit back quickly, which means then when you go back and go, oh, hey, can I get $50,000? They go, yeah, you've paid it on early on time every time. Yeah, here's $50,000. So we did that with the Amex. We applied, and I think we got granted $5,000. We were like, what are we going to do with that? And then within the space of a month, we were at $150,000 on it. So like we just did that, and it was like we just kept applying. They go, yeah, you're up to $50,000. Oh yeah, $80,000. Oh, 100. Now we're at 150. Oh, and then they call you, go, do you want to go up to 200? Like, you know what I mean? Like we capped it somewhere, but I think like that's a good point to get across. Like you can't just go and get $100,000 straight up. It's the same thing with an overdraft as well, which is another good safety net that you need.
Yeah. So for context there, to listen back, if you what Fordy just said there, so he would go and pay, say, a $10,000 wholesaler bill, and then on his credit card, and then he would transfer the $10,000 he had in his bank account straight over to pay off that credit card, and then the next day would pay another wholesaler bill for, say, $5,000, and then pay that off straight away. So what it's proving to them is that you're not just using their line of credit and never not going to pay it back. So you have the cash reserve sitting there, but now you're showing them that you can pay it off. And so I think I even know with Amex, like in their portal now, you can actually like transfer in 50K and you can just leave your 50K sitting in there. I'm not saying to do this or recommend it, but just for example of it, you can actually have the 50K sitting in there and then draw down on that basically as well. So it shows that you have the cash. And yeah, I agree with you. I think we had about 20K in the first month and then we ended up getting up to like 100. I mean, I don't know. We just kept going. Like it got up to like 180 or something like that at one point. I think it was just, they didn't say anything. It just
Hang it off.
just tap and go.
Yeah, and I think it's important to highlight as well. And I love, like, I know there's payment terms and everyone loves to, man, I just hate the coaching industry in general so much when they're like, just change your payment terms. When a lot of times you're on the other people's terms. For residential Betty, 100%.
Yeah.
Send an invoice. She's got like a close of business or one. But if you're working for a large commercial client or a builder, usually they've got large accounts teams and they're
You're
dealing
not
with
your own terms.
yeah, and you're like so far down the food chain.
Yeah.
Electrically, traditionally, is 3 to 5% of a contract. So if you've got so you got to think about that. If you've got $100,000 job, your job might be, in that case, it might be 10%. You might have a 10 grand component of that job. If you've got $1 million job, usually you might be like 50 grand with no automation or something along those lines. Like on average across. So it's like trying to negotiate terms when you're such a small part of the whole picture is ridiculous. It's like your 2-year-old dictating terms.
Like we're in nobody. Realistically, like no one's killing it that much. Maybe Tommy from Riley can do whatever he wants, but like no one's killing it that much where they go and go, you want to work with me? It's close the business. It's this, it's that, it's that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they're just going to go, yeah, right. No.
Yeah, and also, like, obviously with solar, protect yourself, get a 50% deposit. Automation similar, the gear's so expensive. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, if you're at a...
It's about setting the expectation, like the reality.
We used to work for a lot of commercial companies and they would be, 2 weeks from end of month. So whatever work you do in March, you get your invoice at end of March and they pay it like middle of April. And that's
pretty good terms.
Yeah, that's not too bad. I had to negotiate. I was able to actually, funny enough, to backtrack, I was able to negotiate that because I was like, we're racking up huge bills there. And but let's say traditionally, like at a large builder, you work 30 days, put a progress claim in, they'll process it within 30 days and then pay it within 14 days. So you might be out of pocket for 75 days. If you're at a heavy rough in and I've ordered the switchboard's gear for fit off, you're probably out roughly 40% of your contract price. So if you got a 200 grand job, you might be out 60 to 100 grand, somewhere in that range. A credit card can carry, if you've got to pay all your debts in that time, you might not have even got the money to pay the debt at that point. So credit card will buy you time until you get paid for the labor and materials that you've already used. So it's actually incredibly, if you look at it from a holistic sense, it just buys you enough time to ensure you've definitely got paid. It's like a buffer, you might even say. So anything to add to that?
I think it's like you got to look at it as like it's probably one of the main things that's going to help you with cash flow, because all it takes is you do a job where you've got 100 grand switchboard, right? And I know most switchboard manufacturers will take like a 50% deposit up front. Most builders won't let you bill until the switchboard is on site installed.
Literally,
and that's where
bolted in.
You have a problem with like they might be an 8 to 16 week turnaround on the job. They need a 50% deposit on a 100 grand switchboard. So you're paying 50 grand, but the builder's saying, we're not paying you until it's installed on site. Now, these are things that we normally negotiate on terms. If you don't have that conversation early on enough in the job with the builder, you might not get the chance to change that. And they might just go, well, suck it, mate. You didn't tell us that. So therefore, you have the issue of like, I'm not going to be able to get paid for this thing for fucking 16 weeks. And then before they ship it out, they're going to bill you the other 50%. So like, we've done another thing where you can actually talk to, but this is a completely separate thing where you can talk to your bank about, where they will pay an invoice for you and you pay interest on it, but the bank has paid. So like something like a switchboard, you send them the invoice, they pay for it, and you'll pay a low interest rate for them to have paid that for you. It's pretty much works the same way as an overdraft. Sometimes it's just got better rates and things like that.
Yeah. And if you want to be like, if you're flipping this completely, I don't want a credit card, that's
okay.
Well, no. I'm not saying. I'm saying I promise you, look at your life.
Yeah,
You're using the wholesale as a credit card. You've probably got a mortgage on a house or an investment property. So you're using the bank for credit. So you're already operating a little bit like this. It's just a bit more, you're operating a bit smarter in the business sense. So, and overdrafts. Yeah. So how do you negotiate one? I usually just go to the bank and talk to them.
Yeah, I think the same thing. It'll start off smaller, and you don't even like it's a full to us. The overdraft is a full like backup. Like,
safety net.
everything goes to shit. We've still got
Everything goes down. You're going to France with the overdraft.
I'm turning the overdraft. And I'm leaving the country with someone else. That
You'll find me in the territory.
You're like, oh, oui, it's 40.
Open up a church, Ford Lord.
That is a full safety net that we've used it a couple of times. Like if we needed to like maneuver cash around a bit, but that's like a backup plan. But I think it's something good to have. I think it's just good to have those things set up because you actually don't know what's going to happen. So okay, so like this is a prime example where there's a big builder in the area. We didn't do work for them. We quoted a lot of their work and never actually got a job. Thank you to the trade lords, as you say. It's probably fate that we never did one of these jobs. And I know that when they went under, they still had people doing their work. They were using 2 local Sparkies as well. From what I've heard, one of the Sparkies was owed 450 grand when they went under, right? And the other guy that I know, I think he was around 120. So they've gone under. Now he's owed 120 grand. How do you know that's ever not going to happen to you? That the buffer of having the credit card, the overdraft, those things, that might be something that absolutely makes you save your business. It just gives you that time to rebuild back up. Like it's going to be damaging no matter what, but if you don't want to go into liquidation and you've got a backup plan, having that there already in place is your backup plan to rebuild. Like you've got the time, you've already got it set up. You can rebuild your business back up and slowly claw it back instead of just going into liquidation. That's what our sort of thing is. We've set it up as like if everything goes to shit and some dude completely screws us over, we should have enough credit to be going down, but then enough time to build it back up.
Yeah. Without sinking. So for everyone who's listening, so overdrafts, most common place you get them through is through your bank. And it's essentially a line of credit that the bank gives you on your bank account as such. So say you went down to $0 in cash, so to speak, you may still have 50K, 20K, 100K, depending on what you've applied for, sitting there that you have access to. That so you could pay the wages, you could pay off the credit card, those sorts of bits and pieces. It's generally offered a bit more of a generous interest rate as well than credit cards. Well, not generally, it is. But yeah, you can have a conversation with your bank around it. It's quite easy to apply for as well. Like it's generally just online, but particularly if you've already with the bank you're already with. It's just generally a bit of an application. Someone will give you a phone call around that. Just basically think of it as in, if you have $0 and, you may normally have, let's just say 50K in the bank or 75K in the bank. If you had to drain all that down, you hit to zero, you've got like negative 100, so to speak, sitting there, and you just keep drawing down on that until you obviously...
It's like, I look at it as like in your car when your petrol light comes on, you're at zero, but you've still got like 50Ks in the tank, so you know you can push it. It's the same thing. Like, you could go down if you have to, but you're probably going to fill up fuel when the engine light comes on. So it's like that same saying of like it's the like you're saying, I don't like to say safety net, but like I wouldn't use it unless it was like a dire straits. We've done it a couple of things where we've transferred money across to utilize in times of like, we know there's a massive bill for 20 grand coming in tomorrow, but we need to do this. Let's just draw it from there and then move the cash back around. And you just got to be smart with it as well.
Yeah, and I remember just a flashback to when you're going, you mentioned having conversations with project managers or usually in the office about your progress claim for that month. And I think it's important to be strong in that you can still be, we run these third party like guest speakers come into our platform every month. And my friend Linton came on, incredible leadership. Nothing you probably haven't heard before, but everything you need to hear weekly, those things. Yeah. And he talks about the importance of like operating in strength and warmth. So usually warmth is like in communication is reference to weak, like that person's really kind, but I can push them over, or strong is associated with cold. That person's a ball breaker kind of thing. But he was like, how to increase in strength and warmth. And they don't have to operate like a seesaw. You can have a strong conversation in a warm way, or a warm conversation in a strong way. And it was so incredibly impactful, I think, especially to strong people needing to be warmer. But to my personality type, it's probably warmer that needs to be a bit stronger. And it's not until I started to get hell bent into the sort of numbers side of things where I was able to walk into the project manager's office and for your monthly claim, which, if you submit it over email, sometimes they're like, no, like 15%, 20% are crossing it out and everything. And I think sometimes like the importance of relationship in those zones, we had to go, hey, I bought that switchboard. Can you help us out on that center? Can you because I think so many people just get dictated to about what other people's terms are. But if you have an open and honest conversation about, hey, look, I bought this 20 grand item, 100 grand item, whatever it is, how can we both help each other to ensure we're covered? And I think underestimated, actually going to highlight, we had my other friend Josh came in and talked about sales. That was another third party. And I guess we're all of a similar nature, I would say. We sell, but we're not salesy. And I think most of our listeners are probably very similar. But he was just sort of saying like, the importance of, the importance of sort of just going and open communicating what you need and like not letting anything fall through the cracks in terms of like this is what I'm trying to say. I forgot what I was saying. This is what I was saying. So he was saying, if you've got an apples for apples quote or an orange for oranges quote, and one's got a relationship, one doesn't, the person with the relationship wins every time. And there's probably a buffer in that of 10 to 15 to 20%. The client will absorb, but just the importance of relationships with project managers, with builders, with clients, with commercial clients, anything to add?
You sort of touched on it there with the relationship side of things. And if we're talking about the progress claims, which I think a lot of people have been there probably, where you sort of touched on, it's like you put the claim in, it's like, no, like you're getting rejected. Like if anyone's worked with some, with contract administrators or I guess companies that are generally larger, they're the ones who sort of haul you over the coals as such sort of thing. And I think this is where the relationship is so important. It comes into it. And I think in general, this is just my personal opinion. I'd be interested to hear what you both think too. But I think this is when in business that the relationship almost trumps everything with the people that you work for, because working with someone who you have a relationship, it's actually enjoyable because you can ring them up and be like, hey, mate, just to let you know, we're just going to, I know only half the rough-in's done, but the next half's not due for 3 months because of, the way the job's staged. So we're going to claim some of that. You're cool with that? And they're like, yeah, no problems at all, man. I wouldn't expect otherwise. Whereas if you sort of working with someone who doesn't have a relationship, or it's like worse, a contracts administrator who's never stepped on site, never foot on site, it's like, oh, hey man, like we're just going to, and they're like, roughing's not finished. Not my problem.
They go, read the contract. That's what
they read the,
go back and read the contract.
Read the contracts.
100-page thing that we obviously didn't read.
What's it say?
Just tell me what it says.
Yeah.
So I think I go back to there around just how if you, the relationships actually then in turn make working enjoyable, and I guess provides that, not stress-free, because nothing's ever stress-free, but it makes the whole experience of being in business a lot more enjoyable. So it's sort of like almost like it's not buyer beware, but it's like you've got to be aware of who you're working for, because a lot of the stress or I think, things that you're taking home talking around the dinner table about things, they're generally brought on by only like probably a small percentage of your client base. And it's like, do you want to really be working with those people if they're causing you all your... So think of the best client that you have and how easy it is versus the worst client that you've had. Where do you want to sit on that realm within your business? And I know... we sort of talk about it a fair bit in the program around like the consistent workload is really, really big to, I guess our sort of the chant that or the drums that we sort of run by around market wage 20% and the consistent workload, because the consistent workload breeds the enjoyment within the work, and then it brings the predictability to your business as well, because it's like, hey, where's my work coming from? You're not sitting there. It's like, oh, hey, Jimmy's got those 5 jobs happening there. Robbo, we're there every single week because something gets broken on site there. So you're not waking up every morning thinking, where's the next job coming from? You're waking up every morning to emails and work orders or RFQ or something like that. And I think that's really, really important around the relationship side of things.
Yeah, I reckon a good thing for people to like along the same lines when we're talking about claims and just to bounce back on that is like a tool that you can utilize is timeframes and deadlines. So you want the lighting on time to get your project on time, you got to pay up front. And then you set and try and set terms in that way as well. Like you got to do it in a way of a relationship, but then like if you can come to someone, which is what we usually do at the start of the job, and we say, hey guys, just let you know, like switchboards at the moment are like a 16-week turnaround. Like we know that you guys need to get this project done in 18 weeks. We don't want the switchboard to rock up on the last day. Are you guys keen to get the pay deposit now? We can pay up front, we'll put a claim in so we can get it started, get it on site early. We can get it going, we can get it done, and that means then we can get power on earlier for other trades and things like that. And then that conversation, usually they're like, oh yeah, that's a great, oh thanks for bringing that to our attention, let's do it, get it in writing, get it done. Same thing with lighting, like if we can pay for the lighting up front now, it means we can order it now, we can store it in we've got a workshop, we store lighting there. If you're happy to do it, we're happy to store it for you guys and we can keep it at our shed. And it's like putting that thing of like the relationship of like, you're paying for it, but we're doing you a favor by holding it and housing it. And like sometimes with that, like a hot tip that you can do is if you get the lighting supplier to sign off on a stat debt thing saying that like if we went into liquidation, the lighting is owned by the builder, because some builders won't want to pay for it unless it's on site. And that's like another way you can do it. So you can get the lighting supplier to sign something to say, in the event New Age Electrical goes into liquidation, we sign, all the lighting will be delivered to the builder and it's in their property. And then most builders will be like, all right, sweet, we'll pay for it.
Yeah, interesting. Just flashing back to a couple of things. I remember one of the first major contracts I signed was this government job for this pretty large builder. There was 20 like housing units, I guess you would say, government housing units. And I remember they had this like 2 contracts, one for the builder and one to the government. I think it was like a G19 or a G26 or something like that. And then
sounds legit.
Yeah. And it was so long, like 200 pages long. So I called one of my best mates, James, and I was like, "Well, what do I do?" And he just goes like, "You know what the contract says? You know, do bad, get bad; do good, get good." And I was like, yeah, sweet. You know, so the contracts, as long as they are, you know, the essence of, you know, I don't necessarily think you need a lawyer to look over the contracts. You just got to read it. But on that, couple of things, I'm going to go through 2 scenarios here. One, early on, usually they'll try and break a $100,000 or $300,000 or $500 or $1 million job into like 10 cost centers, you know? So you got rough in, and then you got fit off, and and it's like, so, and then you might have a like alarm and CCTV or intercom access control, which is worth like 50 grand of the major job. So they'll try and break it down really generically. But what you can try and do is be like, okay, let's split the switchboard into supply, and then install. So supply might come as the third cost center, you know, before rough-in, we've ordered it. So you can really look at the cost center. I remember for me, they had rough-in, and this was like 13 units at this point, and a couple of like commercial places underneath and basements. And I was like, I'd like to see this a bit more. Like after deck work, I've got this. After this, I've got this. So you can sort of work together. The goal is that you land in 12 to 18 months at a finished product everyone's proud of. So how can we all help each other? And the importance of relationships, I don't want to name the builder or person, but I was sitting with a project manager in the office one time, and then and the best thing about the project managers is a lot of times at the bigger sites, it's not their business, so they can be a bit creative with the money and help people that they like, you know, push variations through on bits and pieces. The importance of relationship. I remember sitting there and I had to finish up, and at this point we were putting through monthly variations and they're sort of getting paid, and towards the end, you know, budget gets tight and they weren't wanting to push the variations through as much as they were earlier. And I remember I sat with this project manager in this office and he absolutely smoked me. Like I had 20 variations, and he was like, "What'd you do for that? Not paying that. Like just cross it out, cross it out." I was shaking in this meeting, like proper. I don't know if
Rattled.
I was crying, but I was crying internally, and it was so hectic, and it was so out of our relationship, which was quite good. It was really contradictory to how we've dealt with each other before. Like we were working in his house. You know, like I remember, I think something weird happened. Like one of the guys took his daughter to school because the wife couldn't go for some reason. So it was like when we were at his house, there's lots of like personal relationship there. And then anyway, so long story short, he hammered me for like 90 minutes to the point of me almost being in tears.
Yeah.
And just go, "Oh sweet, well, like I'll just drop it." And I think it was 20 grand, and I was like, "I'll just drop it to yeah, it's fine, it's fine." Like, it's so good, it's my fault.
I'm paying him.
And yeah, at the end of it, I was like, "Oh, thanks," you know. And then he just looked at me and he goes, "This is going to happen in the meeting next week. You got to be more prepared."
Oh,
And he was doing it as a favor because
as a
that's
role
what the
play.
big
Yeah.
boss. Yeah, it was almost like good cop, bad cop, except there was no good cop.
did he like film that and put it on YouTube, like grown man crying? From...
Oh yeah. And I was like, "No, it's not me. That's AI tears." So I wasn't really crying. You were crying. And then, but that was so interesting. And then we got in the meeting the week after, and I was able to structure my meeting and variations a lot more detailed, a lot stronger in the whole thing. But the importance of relationship, like that relationship probably made us 20 to 30 grand extra on that whole
You were sitting
project.
there, like,
But could have been the profit too, like, or like a portion of the profit. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
can be sometimes the difference between breaking even or making a little bit and then making what you wanted to actually make
Yeah.
as well.
interesting. It's good that you had that from, like, I guess it's a supportive way, and you're sitting there going, "Fuck this dude."
Yeah, it was
I hate
scary.
this guy now. Like you're like,
Yeah.
I thought you were my friend, and they're like, it's good that he's like that.
But what about the lunch we had the other day? We talked
Yeah, it was so hectic. But it's kind of didn't plan to talk about this, but builders get such a hard rap. Like specifically from other coaches, I would say.
Yeah.
Why would you work for builders? I don't know. People screenshot me like messages and send them to me. It's heaps funny from like other coaching companies going, "Why are you doing that? You got to work for residential bedding and you know, like why work for this when you can work for that?" So I'd love to touch on
Fuck builders.
I've been cooked like 3 times. So the first time for 50 grand, we actually got back. That was a government housing contract I was mentioning before. We got back because the government had to like they were essentially
It was part of the contract.
yeah. Like I didn't read it. But that was psycho. Like the builder went bankrupt. But the government appointed the builder.
Good old guy,
right?
Yeah, so they're actually the principal.
And that builder had multiple jobs across multiple states at that point. So it basically fell onto them getting a bad name on it. So they had to pay all the subcontractors out to what was owed. And I had heavily loaded excavation, which we'd finished. So I was like, actually, I think we ended up 20 grand, which was amazing. I was super stoked. But so it's like, but builders, like, it gets a really hard rap on that whole thing. What do you guys think? Because I want to talk about builders and cost plus work, which also gets a huge why would you do that? And I feel like anyone that's speaking negatively of cost plus work, I can guarantee you your company size. Like I can almost guarantee you're at 2 to 4 people and you've got really tight control of everything.
I think also too the cost plus is like just a fundamental understanding of how a business can operate as well. Just, you know what I'm saying there? Like how by having the volume actually floats the business as such is what I'm sort of saying.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What I'm saying?
On that too, I think this is interesting because a lot of people compartmentalize a business to, are you a service business or a project business? Like generally speaking, right? So a lot of times the project guys, because they're skinning a cat in a certain way and they're spreading the overheads, like the overheads are usually quite low and it has to be to approach a project or cost plus work, right? So a lot of times when you try and apply a project mentality to a service job, you probably lose money. So a lot of the project guys go like, hate the small stuff, give it to someone else because they're unsure how to make money. And the service guys their hourly rates are so incredibly high that it's so unachievable to apply that to a larger job, or they've got such so we do a lot of measuring with everyone, and generally speaking, on $1,000 job you can make 30 to 40% net profit. But if you take that to a $500,000 job, you'd probably like 15 to 20 is an excellent result, you would say, at that point. But the benefit of the project gives you confidence to hire, confidence of workload, gives you something for rainy days. Like there's so many pros to the projects, and obviously like the cost plus stuff usually comes at a phone call. Say, hey, I got this job. Yeah, sweet. And it might be like a pub job for whatever, a commercial job. But the service stuff comes with such a high level of administration. So two things. And when I say builder, it doesn't have to be builder. It's commercial.
Like
client.
they're large.
Just someone giving you repeat work. So, and then cost plus work. So that's just that.
I'm going to builder first, right? So I reckon they get a bad rap because generally the collateral damage is larger. So it's like the loudest voice in the room, if you know what I mean. So if like someone goes down, or like a builder goes down, there's lots of people affected, and generally the money is of a higher value. So that's how and sort of can make the papers, make the media, people talk about it in the community.
If I can just stop you there for a sec. I'm going to say collateral damage on two fronts. First front is if they go down, you owed a lot of money. Second front is if on your quote, if you're 20% out at 10 grand, you're probably not going to notice it. If you're 20% out at 500 grand, you're 100% going to notice it. So a lot of times it's a misprice on a larger scale that just exposes everything. And I don't care what any Google ad or something says about systems and processes. No system or process is going to make a C grade electrician an A grade, like an A player. I just think maybe it increases them a little bit, but like, I think anyway.
Yes, I just think so. First and foremost, around that with the builder side of things, I'm a massive believer that there's shit people everywhere in every walk of life. It doesn't matter what you are, where you are. I find that the non-payer in the, let's call it ceiling fan Jan world or the Betty world, the sum of money is generally I'm going to say less than a couple of grand, so to speak. So while it's not easy to wear. For most most businesses, it's a wearable sum of money, like in the sense of it's not ideal, but I'm not going to miss that $600, like in the scheme of things.
You're not going bankrupt.
No, not going bankrupt. Whereas it's generally more catastrophic around the builder side of things. So that's why I think they cop a bad rap. I also think,
and do you reckon on that, because I'm not going to sit at a pub and talk to my friend about, Betty didn't pay me $300.
No, well,
but I'm 100% going to sit at the pub and say, Benny didn't pay me 30 grand.
100%. Yeah. I think it's just a better story. Really, like at the end of the day, it's like $300. Like, what did you do? It's like, I didn't tell her what it was going to cost. You're like, well, there you go. That's your fault, sort of thing. So then on the other side of it, I think it's just an uneducated opinion. Because it's generally coming from people who haven't worked with builders, or they've had a negative experience with it, or they've put pricing in that is basically just not even on the same page or like market as such. So that they have a negative, they've had a negative experience. So then it's easy to sling mud at it. So that's how I generally feel about it. And I think that you can apply that to anything in life. Like if you have a negative experience through an uneducated experience as well. So hey, I went to the dentist, so to speak, and it cost me $1,000, sort of thing. It's like, well, did you ask them what it was going to cost? And you're like, no. It's like, well, there's a bit of exposure there. There's fault on both sides, I think. So
it's like trying to run a marathon tomorrow.
Yeah.
I tried to run 10K, it didn't work, running sucks.
Yeah.
Running, my legs are so sore. It's like no training, no prep, no education.
Yeah.
I'm trying to speak running, but you actually run.
No, that's it.
So that's a bit of Fordy. I'd love to hear you, the builder.
I honestly hate when people say, I don't work for builders, because I feel like I think it's a stupid business decision, but some people, like you say, might have an opinion of it or whatever. I just think, I personally, we all have hard times working with builders. I get that, but I actually love it. And I think all the guys, it's the best kind of work, really.
Yeah.
You're not going to go work. If anyone, this is put it in plain perspective. Have you ever done a renovation for someone doing own a builder or trying to run it themselves? It's a fucking shit show. But as soon as a builder's involved, it's less of a shit show. That just sums it up perfectly right there. A builder, they do get a bad rap, but you've got to remember they've got so many moving parts. It's not just you they're dealing with. it's the tile, the gyprocker, this and that. And like usually I would like to say we're one of the most organised trades on a site. And
But
that's
as in new age or electricians?
no, I mean like
I think electricians. Yeah, I think that's a fair comment.
Electricians in general, plumbers, like compared to the other trades, we've probably got more, your favourite word, systems and processes in place than the old bricklayers and stuff that are working off napkins. But it's a bad rap for brickies. I do love the local brickies. But
Coasters too, by the way, coasters.
but like you're not. I feel like there's more. Like we've got more. We're obviously the elite trade on site. Like everyone knows it. But we are more self-sufficient than other people. I think we're also one of the biggest trades where it comes to like money sums when you spread out a job. Like a lot of jobs have the biggest electrical packages. It makes up a lot of it. So if we're more self-sufficient, you got to remember with all the other things that a builder's dealing with on site, with the painter that goes, oh no, I can't get there now, or the tiler, and then it has the ripple effect of everything. So you might think, oh, the builder's unorganised because they push me out, but it's actually down to most likely another trade. I think they get a bad rap in that sense. The whole non-paying thing, yeah, we've been stitched up by builders. We've also been stitched up pretty bad by people that aren't builders. So it's going to happen no matter where. You've got to also put things in place, like don't leave massive claims to the end of the job. Try and claim early so you don't have like 200 grand outstanding from your fit off. Like it's just common sense with that sort of stuff. Structure it in that way and don't leave yourself vulnerable and open for it to happen. Don't go back to site if someone owes you heaps of money. Like leverage that as well. Like if a builder owes you 150 grand and they haven't made the payment when they think you are, you hold all the power. If you haven't put the power on yet, mate, we're not coming back to site till we get paid. Like you got to be able to, you don't get pushed around in those things as well. Going, no, I'm not paying unless you come back. Well, at the end of the day, most likely you hold the power literally to keep the job on track and running. So like if you don't go back till we get paid, like there's those things you can leverage as well. But I think like, I just think it's, that's our bread and butter. Obviously we might be biased around it, but I think if someone's coaching you or teaching you to not work for builders, I think you're just leaving so much money on the table. Like, what the fuck? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and I just I remember like speaking to you. Seems like you've got a lot of great staff members.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, that guy's a weapon. That guy's very good. This guy's very good. That girl is good. You know, like whatever. But the style of work you do can attract amazing staff members. No 40-year-old or 35-year-old or 32-year-old, which is similar. So no one wants to crawl in a roof space at 40. Like, but probably your peak electrician time is 35 to 45. That's when but you want to hit your straps on a good, solid, like clean project. I was so stoked to do my apprenticeship in proper high-end Sydney residential. Like that was amazing. Seeing the caliber of people you're in and around, seeing the work ethic, seeing the work quality. And it's interesting. I feel like my old boss, he was so good. He'd be 20% more expensive, and then he'd get questioned, and he's like, "We're 20% better." But they literally were 20% better. You can only say that when you are 20% better. So I agree on the
end of conversation.
Yeah.
We're 20.
I guess where do I sign? But I do feel like a lot of the problems people have with builders are self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Like, you got to think if you blow Betty's ceiling fan out from 400 or 600 because you had to put 2 noggins in the roof, like Betty's probably going to be like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. But if you blow the builder quote, same percentage, that's 150% on top of that, right? That's so 400 to 600. If you blow the builder's quote from 40 to 60, it's a big deal. But usually people, like we used to invoice every single Monday, and I just don't feel like, unless of course the payment terms were different to that, every Monday, everything went out, every variation went out. And that was a learnt skill because I got burned a few times, and I was able to reflect that, hey, that was probably my fault. I probably wasn't as upfront with that HAP variation. So I think a lot of people are delayed on invoicing. They don't have the right conversation at the wrong time. And the best way to put that is imagine you're listening to this podcast for free, right? So you're listening to it for free, you're super stoked. And then imagine 2 weeks later, you get an invoice and it's like $500. What's that for? You listen to the podcast, and it's so reference how the worst thing is you probably might pay it. Like that's actually worse than not paying it, I think. But like imagine the communication happening like that I didn't know. And that's ridiculous.
Are we
You could have
charging
at least
you
called
with
me.
this now?
Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got your card details, but imagine before you got linked to this podcast, I said we're going to charge for it.
Yeah.
There's no shock. You're like, oh, I know I'm going to pay for that. That's what they said. So I think too many people leave the conversations till too late, or it's different to what they said. Or imagine I was going to charge you $500 for this, and then 2 months later you get an invoice for $1,000. Like, what happened? You said 500. Yeah. But it's so interesting. Like, I think a lot of the pain is self-inflicted, and it's at a larger scale, which is relatively exaggerated. Is that sort of you picking up what I'm
the communication side of it?
Communication
A lot of it is communication. Or like you're late on a claim, you didn't tell them about that variation, you didn't communicate. It's like, but remember how you asked me to do these 10 things, and so like it's. As opposed to being like on the Monday after, say, the Friday that you were there, so the week after, you was like, hey, just confirming these are the 10 things that we discussed at these times. They've been completed now, sort of thing. And it's bang, sweet. Yep, sweet. I just need you to approve it, please. As opposed to being like, here's 100 things 6 months later, and they're like, that never happened. Like,
or you're trying to charge for like, oh, you moved the light from here to here. Yeah, come on. You can't. There's a bit of.
I think you got to remember as well is you as your company, your business, you need to be seen as making the builder's life easier and the client's life. Like, you want them to look at you and be like, we use these guys because they literally make our life easier. They come to us with variations before with a price, so we can take it to the client. Because that's the other thing. So you layer the builder's not paying the variations. The client is. They then have to take this list of 100 things with all these prices to it that aren't broken down to the client, and then they get rinsed for it. So like the clearer you are with that with your builder and go, hey mate, yeah, if we do that is going to be a variation. Let's like map it out. It's probably going to be $400. And they go, yep, sweet, we'll take it to the client. Yes or no? Do you want to proceed with this? If you just do it willy nilly and you expect to get paid, that's on you. Like I think conversations beforehand and trying to like get variations signed off is like a huge thing. That's what we don't let anyone do work without getting anything signed off. They've all got variation forms in their job packs that have to be signed by the builder on site, and they will not do anything unless that's signed. That then gets sent with the variation quote if it's a quote, or the price if it's cost plus.
Yeah,
and like that, the builders like that because it makes their life easier, because then they just go straight to the client and go, that's what the guys found on site. Do you want to proceed? Yes or no? It's going to cost $200 to add an extra wall light in that you said. No. Sweet. Don't worry about it. We're not doing it. The client doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, and I think you got to have some standards. So worst case, Monday variations all sent. Best case, if you're walking around a rough-in, kitchen renovation, new build, duplex, whatever, have the walkthrough before you start and get everything approved and sent before you start. There's no cleaner way. And if they can't get approved and sent before you start, ask the question, why? Like,
what's the hold up?
What's the hold up? Because it's like the last thing you want to do is do something and then wonder if you're going to get paid.
Well, can I say how we do what we do? It might help people.
Yeah.
Is we'll quote, and obviously we try and push to have a client site meeting before we do anyway. Like you might have done a disconnect or something, but like we'll push hard to have a client site meeting where you walk through with the client, and I guarantee there will be changes. Now, if we haven't built off that quote yet, there's some builders we work with, we go, we haven't done any work. We're going to change the quote and re-amend the contract to this now, because like sometimes trying to backtrack of like minuses and pluses later on down the job gets so messy. So if we can and it's clean and we can do it, and we walk through and we've got everything itemized as like we've allowed for 50 downlights. We just did a walkthrough and they've added 10. The quote will get resubmitted, not as a variation. It'll be like now it will say 60. Like, it doesn't work on big commercial jobs, but houses and stuff where we've broken it down and we've got like point rates for everything, it works really well. And then that contract can then be changed before we've done any work. And they now know like that job's gone from 60 to 70 grand. But when you get to the end and you start doing it, you're like, oh, remember like when we did that walkthrough and like you added 10 downlights? And then they go, yeah, but we took away 2 PowerPoints. And they go, oh yeah, true. So then I got to do the deductions. Like it gets kind of messy. So if you can do it before you've even sent an invoice and you can change your quote, it's another good way of doing it. If some builders don't like changing quotes because they're contracted to it, but like if you can do it, then it's another.
I think the key there is that it's done beforehand, so it's done prior. Yeah. So that's the key to it all. And I would I think similar to you, Fordy. Like we push to do it before the rough in starts.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like we're not doing it like the day of. Like you're trying to do it so that because some people have budgets they need to stick to, and some people have wish lists, some people have nothing, and we also find that the client's plans are quite simple. Like so they could come across quite basic, and that's through. That's through no one's fault. It's just that that's what they got off their architect or their designer or whatever it is. So we have a checklist that we run through with the client. Have you considered this? Have you considered that? And we actually try and get that to the client before the walkthrough now, so that they've had a chance. Because if you spring it on, so, hey, have you thought about solar, for example? They're like, oh. No, I haven't. We want it, and then you send them the bill. I send them the quote, and it's $13,000, for example, and they're like, "Oh, no, I don't." Whereas, like they could you can warm them up beforehand, so they've got a bit of an idea. So yeah, we have a checklist now that we run through to tick off every item has been discussed. More so too so yes, it's really good communication point of view, but we also use it as a point of view so that or point of difference, I guess, so that the builder or the client can't come back to us at the fit off and be like, hey, why didn't you ever tell us about the potential for like a PowerPoint for this or potential for that? And it's like, man, we went through it all and you've ticked it off or we crossed it off. We've discussed everything with you, because a lot of things people don't realize. And then like I tell everyone, I'm like, we literally went through this recently with a client. They wanted solar in the future, so like it's 100% what they want done. So, and it's a beautiful like Hamptonsy style house, and I'm like, sweet, too easy. We'll put the DC provision in now, because otherwise everything's just going to be external, dirty, like, and they're going to run around because they had exposed eaves as well. So like you couldn't go up through it, you would have to shoot a loop of dirty coral around the gutter.
It's the Foxtel way.
Foxtel was the only way. So yeah, we had and then and the builder was fully on board. He was like, yeah, let's do this now because it's going to look awful down the track. So it was an easy conversation, but it was an educational conversation as well. And they're like, oh, and okay, that makes sense. Like, and then you can put all the provisions in for it, protect it correctly, all those sorts of bits and pieces.
Like, allows you to be solidifying yourself for that, because like most people, if they do solar as well, they might call around and get 10 quotes and get cheap quote. But if you've already put provision in for it, you hide it in the roof where no one knows where it is. It's there, it's somewhere.
Put a little snake over it.
I'll just put the ground plan notes. Go to the far right corner.
You start the job, you can't solidify yourself in, then you can do those follow-ups. And like, oh, hey, remember we did this? We did the same thing with batteries as well. Like we put do you want to do provision for batteries? And like, yeah, we want to do it. Then we can follow up and be like, oh, remember we put the hybrid inverter in? Do you guys want to look at doing batteries now? Like, oh yeah, we've been thinking about it. And it's like, leads you into do that. You can do the same thing with the solar. Put the rough it in, do that, and then later on follow it up, and it's going to lead to more.
Particularly now with the rebate.
Yeah.
Battery rebate, I guess.
That's we can do a whole other podcast on how that doesn't get paid as well. That's a shit show.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know much about it.
It's a shit show. I don't know. Do you do?
It's only in New South Wales, that scheme at the moment. I know.
Yeah, like trying to get the money. It's like, I think we waited 4 months to get a claim back.
Is this the one that's coming in July 1?
Oh, no, this is the one that's there now. The rebate that's involved now. It's a
claim.
Yeah, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that.
Yeah. We should do that.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
I don't know enough about it. I just know that solar guys are always over there cursing because we haven't even paid. It's been like 6 months. Trying to get money off a government scheme. It goes to some third party that
who administers it.
Some other money.
Yeah.
It's a shit show.
Thank God you've got a credit card and overdraft, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But back to so we used to have a walkthrough, and I think this is where you got to read the room, read the person, read the client. So we work for this guy. One of our clients is worth literally $1 billion, and whatever he said, you did, and it was hourly rate work. So there was he didn't need to log anything. The invoice could have been in Chinese. Didn't matter. It was just like I wasn't going to bother him with any variation. Form, sign, anything. We pretty much had people at his places, two to three people a year he would take care of, right? So that was and that was a relatively unique situation.
I think for perspective too, like this is the type, because Crowe and I have talked about this before, this is the type of guy who like you'd go into the property and you would, Crowe's team would wire all of downstairs and then a week and a half later, Crowley would speak with him and be like, "Oh, hey, just by the way, we're redoing that section."
The cash cow.
There's no downstairs.
There's no, and it was just like simply as like, sweet, no worries at all. So you would go and remove what you'd done, or alter what you'd done to suit what the request was.
Well, 100%. And then he doesn't want to be bothered. He just wants to call it in and get it done. So, and in that case, quoting, not even hard, genuinely impossible. Like there's no way you could quote anything for that guy. Incredibly entrepreneurial, incredible payer every fortnight. So you watch Stuart, the checks coming at you, right? But so hourly rate work, he says as you get larger and into a certain client type, hourly rate becomes actually impossible to avoid. Yes, I agree. You're going to come unstuck at Betty's house doing 10 PowerPoints, but you can also come unstuck on a price book if you're not properly organized at that point. My general rule of thumb is if the job's predictable, the price book is applicable. So if the job's open, clean, yes, that's $150 a PowerPoint. I can see everything cool, but you try and apply that 150 to Betty's, like a circuit for a pool filter or something like an external power. You should try and provide that 150 at a Queenslander with noggins and, no sort of like
single skin walls.
Yeah, single skin wall, that kind of stuff. You kind of fully cooked. But so we used to have a walkthrough and then work out what was deleted and added. On that too, the incredible importance of having a price book to get to that point, because you got to think if a price book gets you to that number, then you know what you can take off and add on. Now, I want to go across here for now. Let's work out if your price is 10 grand for something and it's a whole bunch of works, and then the client adds 3 PowerPoints, you add them at $300 each, and that $300 doesn't add up to how you got to the 10 grand. Is that sort of making sense? So if you try and overcharge for something, so let's say you've got an original quote, there's 20 PowerPoints and 10 downlights, and a whole bunch and 50 data points, and it's 10 grand, like whatever, right? Let's say it's that. And then you go and try and charge a lot for a PowerPoint or any variations, you will cook yourself. Like you need to have a rhyme and a reason. So the client's like, hang on, if I was paying $300 a PowerPoint across that 10 grand quote, the quote should have been 20 grand. Like you can't stitch anyone up on a variation. So you've got to basically work out what's subtracted, what's added. And that's the cleanest way to roll forward. Before I go into cost plus work, have you guys got anything to add on that? So just make sure you know how you got to your number, and then when it's added and subtracted, make sure it's fair. The best rule I have with invoicing, there's 2 rules. Problem with the invoice, problem with the process. So if you send an invoice and someone's got a problem with it, then what led up to that point? Chances are almost 100% you could have done something better or differently. There's the second rule of thumb. I can't even remember the second rule of thumb, but it's going to be good when I come back to it. So on this cost plus work, it's unavoidable. So for this guy we used to work for, coming into it, there was no option. It gets such a hard rap, but I feel like if you can skin your overheads in a certain way, you can be extremely and incredibly profitable on cost plus work. It's got to be handled correctly, of course. My 2 cents on cost plus work is like usually the client calls, you send a bill, you get paid. So there's got to be an element of clear communication. But generally speaking, with cost plus, there's usually no like advertising costs associated with finding that client. There's no quoting, which if you're we used to do a lot of pubs worth a lot. So a 500 grand quote might take you in the office 2 weeks, and then you might have 2 to 4 hours of project management associated with a week with that job. So you eliminate that, and now you're getting paid for that. So it's paid learning, I would definitely associate it with. Plus, as well, there's no downtime. So your labor efficiency will be 100% every single week. In other words, you bought 40 hours, you sell 40 hours. You bought 40 hours, you sell 40 hours. Other than that as well, you can skin the cat. So we were paying at that point between sort of $32 an hour. Imagine if you were paying that for a trading now. Well, you'd be so stoked, right? Between 32 and 45. So 45 was the top, 32 was the bottom. You can reference that now to $40 and 55 probably is the realm, right? So, if I was able to use, instead of using the $45 an hour guy, if I use the $32 an hour person, it's still decent product in getting the job done and getting the job rolling. Instead of using the $28 mature age, I could use the $15 an hour junior. So I've just clawed back potentially $20 at least, conservatively, on my hourly rate, because hourly rate doesn't differ. If you're 110 an hour, 100 an hour, 120 an hour, it doesn't differ depending on how much you pay your tradie. So you can claw back money there. Also, casting an element of question into the client. So a better question when someone's like, what's your hourly rate? You can be like, well, who's doing the work? Like, a better question to respond to your client is, how good you are, how effective you are, how much you're going to handle this job. You got to think about this, right? If someone's $100 an hour or $200 an hour, they can be the same rate if the $100 an hour person is twice as good. So picture the $100 an hour person getting in, roughing that job out in $800, like for $800, $200 an hour person's like, oh yeah, like bit disorganized, takes them 2 days. So you can challenge the client's perception or opinion on hourly rate. And obviously the big elephant in the room is the materials move. So when you're moving a bunch of materials at a decent margin, right, you can subsidize that hourly rate. So your hourly rate of X, let's call it 100 because it's super clean math, might actually be 120 when you reverse engineer the large materials move back on top. But thoughts about hourly rate work? How do you go about it? What do you do if you get offered it? Because are you guys of the same opinion? Not everything can be priced.
We don't stray away from cost plus. I think like a way of looking at it is like risk v reward, and like on a quote, you're taking a risk because all you're doing is estimating how long it's going to take someone to do something, pretty much, right? That could go horribly wrong, and it could take way longer. There's things that happen. Also, people fuck shit up. Some people fall through the roof. Someone does it. You know what I mean? Like, so much stuff can happen.
Redo every data point 4 times.
Something like can happen like that, and the quote that you think's looking really good can fully get chewed up. So there's your risk versus reward there, or it might do really well. Whereas like the risk versus reward of cost plus is like, there may not be as a big a reward, but there is no risk because you are, like you said, you're billing out the time on site. So there's no risk with cost plus, but the reward may not be as big. So you've got to sum up that risk. Do you want to take the risk, or do you want the reward? Like, how do you want to work that? So like big jobs, like for example, we did a job, we had to estimate it. It was estimated 400 grand and the final price was 800,000. So there you go. That's just everyone knew that it was never going to get quoted because of all the changes. But like, imagine, thinking 400 grand, that's sick. I'm going to go into that. Like, yeah, we'll lock in. And then the way those jobs roll is like absolute nightmare. So many changes. Like, we would have done runs. Like, you just can't, you don't know where you're going to end up. It's double the price.
I don't even have to ask you, but I know you've got a pub job at the moment quoted, and you've had a pub job cost plus. I'm only assuming as a business owner, you would prefer the cost plus.
I think the good thing with the pub job we're doing now is we stripped it back to bare bones. So it was like, there's
predictable.
No unknown. Like when you're doing a pub reno, anyone that's worked at a pub knows that like half a pub wide by the bloke drinking jars at the bar.
From 1985.
Yeah, and they probably still use him when you're working there as well.
Yeah.
But when it was stripped back to bare bones, made it way easier. Like, obviously easy to quote. We did a lot of design and construct as well. So we like worked to design switchboard design and underground layouts and things. So we still had a lot of power with it. Like, it wasn't, we can sort of direct things and be like, this is how we're going to do it and this is how much it's going to cost. There's a QA involved QS involved that sort of, will question things, but like, we know what we're doing in a way of like, no, well, this is why. Argue back. I think with that one, better to do. The other thing I like about quoting is like, it's upfront. There's no arguments. Cost plus can always turn out in like, well, why did it take so long? And people always think about, are you taking a piss? If you're just charging an hourly rate, how do I not know that you're going to be like here for double the time? So there's all those things. And I actually had it the other day where I got one of the guys in the office to the first time ever quote something. So he did a quote by himself, first time ever, sent the quote in an email to the client. The client read back straight away, goes, break this down. And instead of doing a breakdance on the floor, he rang straight and goes, what do I do? Like, he wants me to break it down. He wants to know like how much the materials are, the hourly rate and things like that. And I just said, well, what do you reckon you should say? And he's like, oh, fuck, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Okay, well, straight up, it's going to be an annoying client. I know that. And I just said, look, it's your first one. Let's make it simple. I'll do it for you. I'll write an email back. And I just said, hey mate, this is our hourly rate, but this is how long we've estimated. We don't break our quotes down when we've done them like this because we're estimating the time and it could run longer. We are more than happy to do this job at cost plus at this rate per hour plus materials. You do stand the risk that it is going to go over what we've said, or it could come way under. So the choice is yours. What risk do you want to take? And then I sent that to him. He ripped back, I'm happy to take the risk of going cost plus. I said, sweet. So hopefully it's way more than what we quoted, but we'll figure out.
We'll see what happens.
A really easy way for him to then do an analysis on his quote, because he's quoted it and now he's going to go to a cost plus, so he can actually see, without the risk, was I right or was I wrong? And then he might do it in, like, he quoted 9 hours. He might do it in 6 hours and go, we would have made way more money on the quote, but it might take 12 hours. So he's going to know where he sits and it's going to help him for his next quote.
Learning experience.
Because cost plus, the best way to articulate is a transfer of risk. If you quote it, you take the risk of the warranty, and if it's going to blow out, and if you can still buy the materials for that, and if the client is cost plus, the client takes a risk. Are these guys going to get a job done in a reasonable time frame? Are they using decent materials? Are they, just...
Are they licensed?
Yeah.
Different story.
So I think there's 100% a place for it. I think back costing should be done at cost plus. Every job should be back costed at cost plus.
It's free learning.
It's paid.
It's paid learning. Yeah.
And so it's absolutely huge, and it's an arm of the business that you need. I think if you're only on the service price book, and you might have summed it up before, like if it's the pub being stripped back, it was predictable. You could see everything. There was no hidden stuff, although there's going to be changes a little bit, of course. It's predictable. We can quote it. So anytime you're price book or quoting, it's essentially predictable, I would say. And anytime you get delve down cost plus, it's unpredictable. Whether that's the actual job, I'm not sure if we're going to hit rock at that point. That's why a lot of excavation companies can't quote. Or maybe the client's unpredictable. Hey, I know how you work. You like to change things, This is the best way forward, So that's the unpredictability, but you need sort of both arms. There's absolutely no denying you should be able to make more money off a price book or quote. That's absolutely should be pound for pound truth. The biggest danger, I think, is people seeming to carry some sort of badge of enlightenment that, I don't work off an hourly rate, I work off a price book. And that always gets me really internally frustrated, because I'm like, well, you have to reverse engineer the job to a net profit. That net profit could be translated to an hourly rate, and a marginal material. So you are working on a rate. You're just thinking, and I think the danger of having a price book can be that a lot of times it can be wrong and you don't notice it until after the job. So the importance of back costing or job costing is to reference, am I on the right track with that price book? Was I on the right track with that labor materials estimation? And I think your business is screaming at you data and detail, and are you listening is the big thing. But we've got to land this plane in the next sort of 5 minutes. Anything that's going on in your head to add, to change?
I'll just quickly cycle back on that. This could not end in 5 minutes, but I feel like I'll bounce back as someone who's not a business coach, and you guys can win this. There's so many ads that will pop up on people's things of saying, if you're still charging $128 an hour, you probably know how much.
I know
if
exactly.
You're still charging $120 an hour, you are not making money. Yeah. And I think it then scares people. And I think it's like that thing of you can't believe everything you hear. You don't know what's going on with these people. You don't someone saying, yeah, we're going to make you charge this much per van on the road and do this. One thing is some of the things I listen to is you're just plain ripping people off if that's the case. And I don't think that's a sustainable business model at all. I think everyone should be pricing fairly. I know we're all in it to make money, but also I don't want to go and rip people off, and I would never expect people to be thinking I charged bloody 20 grand and the job cost was only 3 grand. When you're blatantly ripping someone off. And I think there's all this marketing now from coaches and things like that where it's almost pushing that of being don't do hourly rate because you're not making enough money, and you should be charging this, and you could be making this, and you could be making this hundreds of $1,000s a year. And it starts putting that in people's heads and thinking and then it's going against the whole thing of cost plus. Whereas that could be so damaging to someone's business. Exactly what you just said, of like someone going on, imagine getting offered a cost plus job and then turning it down because they've listened to someone preach badly about it.
Yeah.
And then they completely get fucked over by the quote and their whole business crumbles over it. Whereas they could have stayed in a safety net of doing a cost plus job and it would have been really well. Still would have made money. You're not going to lose money as long as you've got, as long as you know your cost of operations,
Yeah.
that you're charging enough and you're putting enough markup on materials, then you can't lose money.
It's actually enjoyable.
Yeah, it actually like takes risk out.
Yeah.
The same thing you said with like project management. It takes your overheads down because on a quoted job, you're not charging project management, which should be allowed into your cost of operations. Whereas on a cost plus job, we then charge the project management fee. So
project.
where you've got someone
Lost time costs.
rate, you're then charging them out possibly at a higher rate as well, like we do on bigger projects. The project management fee is more. You then on charge that cost, so you actually could be making more money than you think.
It's so interesting because on a calculator sense, you know, we'd be counting you as a zero, your office, but you've now
become a billable resource.
You're now 1 to 2 days a week billable for something that you weren't billable for. So that's going to lower your overhead costs. So it's absolutely. I know when I was working at the old company who shan't be named, but people can probably piece it together. I turned up there and then they were just so against cost plus work, and I was like, "Have you guys even run a business? Like, you can't." I knew how much money we were making, and I knew we were doing really well as an electrical company. And then I'm watching these guys negatively talk about hourly rate work, and it shouldn't be 100% of your business. But if it is, it might not be a problem. But I was watching these guys sort of preach, "Oh no, we don't do that. Work on a price book," and I'm like, man, you guys are missing out. But obviously, the big clincher, whatever it is like, you know, your overheads have to be a reasonable amount. So what I was saying before about you might be able to use a tradie of $5 less value that's still good enough to get the job done to that standard, and you might be able to use a junior apprentice or whatever. So you might be able to save $15 and $20 an hour on your team. Overhead wise, talking out loud, a general overhead is going to range from $25 to $55 an hour per person. So if your service is probably more like 55 or a larger company, if you're skinning the cat in a certain way, it might be 25. So if you can save $20 on your team and $20 on your operating costs, then 110 is someone's 150. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, to compare the two is not even impossible. It's borderline evil or ungodly. So yeah, it's actually really interesting. And I think like we were chatting off air. I think the coaching industry has a lot to answer for. I saw people raise their prices up to this price book, which was, I think, unfair. And then they were winning a job. They posted in the chat. Everyone's like, "Oh, I won that job at this," and it was this like toxic masculinity just reigning supreme in the chat. And then, but they lose the client because over 3 or 6 months of being overcharged, the client's like, "Is this normal?"
Taking the piss.
And I feel like you've got to operate under the barbecue principle, right? And you've got to be able to turn up to the barbecue in front of your friends and family and that client and explain the invoice.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying you can't make money. No one's saying you can't make money. It might be like, "Oh yeah, we quoted 40, 10 grand and the job cost me 7, but he approved it. He had got other quotes and like, it's like, oh cool, that makes sense. Yeah. You know, if it can't make sense at a barbecue, and also you want to be on the right side of those barbecue chats. If you're overcharging someone or you've done something untoward and you're on the wrong side of that barbecue chat, your reputation is cooked. So yeah.
Love it. Love it. We could talk about this for hours, but I think fundamentally for me, from what we've discussed for the whole last bit over an hour, is knowing your numbers allows you to make all these decisions and allows you to be informed and educated. And I mean, I don't really need to say any more than that it's so pivotal because it can allow you to be like, make a decision if I want to do that cost plus job. Know what net profit I can potentially make on that quoted job, all going well. It's just so pivotal rather than literally just like throwing a dart at a dartboard and or operating off like an ungodly or inflated number, and basically having to try to generate work. Like you're literally waking up every day being like, all right, sweet, back into it now. I've got to create another 50 leads, which to me is just like my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my 2 bobs. But yeah, we'll probably land the plane there. So thanks again, boys.
Sign off, Fordy. What's your sign off?
Sign off. I want to say as well, like I get a lot of messages from people asking me questions, and like I'm more than happy to answer things about but I do also get a lot of questions about like, how much should I be charging this? Like, I can't tell you that. And I think the only way, like my piece of advice is like, you guys don't pay me to say this, so like I'm letting people know it's not a plug or anything, but like I really think it would be helpful for people just to reach out to you guys to get that information. Like, do you have a way, like, do people, like, could they come to you and say, hey, I don't want to be coached full time. All I want to do is know my cost of ops. Can you help me out with knowing that and learning? And can they pay you to do that? Is that a thing that you guys offer? Like, just come in for like a few sessions to work it out?
Yeah,
Because I think people will get scared that they don't want to sign up to some 6-month thing that they might not have the time or whatever to do. But I feel like there's so many people that really need that side of it. And they're asking people questions about it, but really like, I don't know your numbers. I'm not logged into your zero. I can't tell you what the cost of ops is. You need to talk to someone that can work that out. And I've been sending people to come to you guys because I think it's just a smart thing to do. And I just wanted to say that, like, if you're listening to this and you don't know that, you need to know that. And I think if they can come to you and know that it's like, even if it just starts at you helping them do that, I reckon that's a great thing. And I would like push people to at least get that side of things going with you guys for sure.
Yeah, thanks. Do we have to pay
really
you now?
appreciate
Or- You tell
Give
you
my code. 20% discount at Sparky code.
because if you don't,
proceed.
if you don't pay, we're pushing
go-
your overdraft after we're cooked.
Just gonna-
Make sure you drop my name so then all
Just
the
gonna close that
all the
little
plugins
loophole.
Yeah, comment 410. We'll give us some discount. No, thanks. All right, cool. Well, we
works.
didn't actually get to at all the finding work thing, which that's kind of exciting. We have to catch up again and talk about that because I feel like that's an awesome convo. But thanks, Fordy.
Thanks, Fordy. Thanks, Crowy.
And we'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Catch ya.